Hello and welcome to Standard 13, Advertising, Recruiting, and Enrollment Standards for Institutionally Accredited Schools. Now, this standard is a complement to Standard 5, which covered the actual admission process and all the documentation to the school's program. Now, that's applicable to both institutional and programmatic accreditation. It's a requirement from the Department of Education. So this may look similar, but it does have further requirements for institutionally accredited schools that look more specifically at advertising, recruiting, the catalog, and enrollment agreements. The overview of this standard: there are 6 sections to Standard 13, and they're all related. A is the advertising and promotion, recruiting practices and personnel, the catalog, enrollment agreements, the non-discrimination clause governing recruiting and admissions, and transfer credit. So let's look at each of these sections in a bit more detail. First of all, Standard 13A, advertising. Now, the most important item to remember is that this standard actually covers all promotional materials put out by the school, not just paid advertising in print or TV or radio. So it does look at the website, brochures, any flyers, mailings, postcards, anything that you develop is covered under this standard. And all of these things must be clear, factually accurate, current, and avoid leaving any false or unsupported impressions of the school or the programs. Now, there are more details and more guidance on the COMTA advertising and recruiting policy. It has specific do's and don'ts, what you can and cannot say. That policy is on the COMTA website, and it's also embedded in this module. So I recommend that you take a good look at that, and it will provide more information. So Standard 13B, this covers both the recruiting practices and your personnel. These two standards were put together in one. It's the how and the who. And the first point to mention is that we do have some schools sometimes say, well, we don't do any recruiting. This doesn't apply to us. And it actually does. Even though you may use a different term, you may not call them recruiters, or you may not do outside active, across the country recruiting. Recruiting in this sense refers to any and all activities that are responsible for generating and pursuing a potential student. So that may be called admissions at your school, and if so, the admissions representatives, the admissions departments are the one that should be following these standards. So you must be able to demonstrate that your practices and the personnel are compliant with all regulations. So this will include any state regulations that you have, as well as COMTAs and any Title IV, for example. All the recruiting practices and personnel are ethical, accurate practices, and you are working to attract only those students who are qualified and likely to complete and or benefit from the program. No guarantees of employment or licensure can be made. Your recruiting or admissions personnel are properly trained. No financial incentives for recruiting and enrollments can be used. This is a new requirement in the COMTA standards, so please note that. And there will be more details in the course in case that brought up some questions. So Standard 13C covers the catalog. The catalog must be an accurate portrayal of the institution, the programs, the facilities and resources which the student will be using during their education, and all policies and procedures. It must be readily available to prospective students prior to signing an enrollment agreement. It must comply with all of the items on the COMTA catalog checklist. This has been slightly revised in 2015, so please make sure you have the newest version. It is included in the course and on the website, as well as in the initial application. And your catalog can be printed or electronic, either one, but all versions must be consistent and easily accessible for students, prospective students, and current students. Enrollment agreements are to be used, and the purpose of this is to ensure the applicant is fully informed of rights, responsibilities, and obligations of both the institution and the student. It truly is your contract. And many states have requirements on the enrollment agreement as well. This would be in addition to those. So we want to make sure you're complying with your state regulations, and this one, the COMTA requirements as well. So just a quick overview here. The enrollment agreement must be completed prior to enrollment. So this is not something that should happen on the first day of class, for example. And it must comply with the items in the COMTA enrollment agreement checklist. So that the commission requires certain things be included in your enrollment agreement. Again, that may be in addition to your state. And a signed copy must be provided to the student. The non-discrimination clause for student admissions. The commission includes as protected statuses race, gender, which is now the preferred term instead of sex, religion, nationality, age, disability, and sexual orientation. If any local laws require differences in this, you would have to explain and provide evidence of that. But this is what the commission prefers is included, as well as any other statuses maybe in your area. This standard also includes the provision that you reasonably accommodate applicants with disabilities. So let's take a couple minutes on this particular standard. First of all, this includes both physical as well as learning and any mental emotional disabilities. It's not just physical, it's also learning disabilities. And I want to be clear that this is an ADA requirement, American for Disabilities Act. It's not just for accredited schools. It's not even just for Title IV schools. This is a federal law that applies to every public and private business in the country. So you're automatically included in this. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the ADA, however, so we do recommend that you get additional information either from a lawyer or there's some great resources out there. Max Knowledge has a course specifically for career schools in complying with the ADA, which is very helpful. But it does not mean, the ADA does not require that you admit everyone who applies, but that schools cannot use the disability itself as a basis for denial. So what that does is ensure that you've really thought through your admissions criteria. So if you feel like there are certain test scores, certain cognitive or physical requirements that your program has, you do want to be upfront with that because you do want people to succeed. You want to make sure that you're bringing in the best students that you can, but these admissions criteria should be outlined and applied to all students, not just someone that has a disability, for example. So again, for more information on that, we do recommend that you take a look at that, but the ADA basically is included in this standard. And finally, Standard 13F is transfer policy and transfer credits. So a couple notes on this. First of all, this standard refers to you accepting transfer credits during the enrollment process. It's not whether or not your courses will transfer elsewhere. So the policy that you must have in your catalog should be about accepting transfer credit. Now, you may not want to, and that's okay. So it's not required that you accept previous coursework. If you choose not to, then that should be the published policy. So essentially the components of this standard are that you do publish and then consistently implement whichever transfer policy you believe to be best for your program, and that you specify the educational criteria that would guide acceptance. So too often we see policies that are very short and they say, well, it would be done on a case-by-case basis. It is, of course, should always be done on a case-by-case basis. You shouldn't have to just accept anything. But what will guide that case-by-case? You should give your prospective students an idea of that ahead of time. For example, you may have in your policy that the coursework needs to be done within a certain amount of time, maybe only within 5 years or 10 years. Maybe they have to have received, of course, a certain grade. Only a certain amount of credits or hours can be transferred in. It needs to be a similar course, and that is usually demonstrated by a catalog or a syllabus. Maybe there's a test, so they have to be able to pass a test as well. All of those things are important to and used on your case-by-case assessment, but they're very clearly specified so that they're consistently and fairly implemented. And of course, documentation is important, and reviewers will be looking through student files of anyone that has brought in transfer credit to make sure that you are following your policies. So that is an overview of Standard 13. We're going to look at some specific details now in the course. If you have further questions, feel free to contact COMTA staff. Thank you very much.